For 4 long years he waited, through scorching summers, freezing winters, and relentless storms. He remained in the same spot, staring down the road, hoping for someone who never returned. A German shepherd named Duke had become more than just a dog. He was a mystery, a ghost of the past, a heart-wrenching tale of devotion that no one could explain. People tried to help, offering food, warmth, even a new home. But Duke refused. He was waiting. But for what? Or for who? Then, on one fateful morning, something incredible happened. A single moment changed everything. You won't believe the miracle that brought Duke's story full circle. Stay until the end, because this will restore your faith in loyalty, love, and destiny. As the morning sun stretched its golden light across the empty highway, its warmth slowly burned away the thin mist clinging to the pavement. The road was quiet, interrupted only by the occasional passing car. And yet, as always, he was there. Near the abandoned gas station, a German shepherd sat, his fur dusty and unkempt, his gaze locked on the road ahead. He barely moved, barely acknowledged those who passed by. He just waited. For 4 years, Duke had made this lonely stretch of highway his home. No one knew where he came from. Truck drivers, commuters, and the few remaining residents of the small town all noticed him, but no one had the heart to chase him away. They left food. Sometimes he ate, but only when no one was watching. If anyone came too close, he would stand up, take a few steps back, and sit down again. He never barked. He never growled. He never caused trouble. He only waited. Martha Reynolds, the owner of the town's small diner, was one of the first to take notice. Every morning, before unlocking the doors of her shop, she would stop by the gas station and leave food near the rusted fuel pumps. "Poor thing," she would say, shaking her head. "He's waiting for someone. I don't know who, but I hope they come back." Through brutal winters and unforgiving summers, Duke never left. He curled up against the decaying walls of the gas station, seeking shelter from the wind and rain. On some nights, when the town was still, people would hear him whimper softly, a heartbreaking sound that no one could ignore. Some tried to help. A trucker once attempted to coax him into his rig. A kind woman brought a leash, hoping to lead him away to safety. But Duke never left. The moment anyone tried, he would pull away, retreat a few feet, and sit back down, his unwavering eyes fixed on the horizon, as if he were waiting for a promise. Then, on a cold autumn morning, everything changed. Noah Patterson, a 32-year-old investigative journalist, had driven through the town countless times, always en route to his next assignment. He had seen the dog before, sitting near the gas station, but had never given him much thought, until today. Something about Duke's posture, the silent patience in his eyes, made Noah slow his car. He pulled into the gas station and what happened next was nothing short of a miracle. Noah sat in his car watching. The dog was completely still, focused, waiting. A strange feeling settled over him as he reached for his phone and snapped a quick photo. There was something haunting about the unwavering patience in the German shepherd's eyes. Curiosity took hold. Noah stepped out of his car and walked into Martha's diner. The comforting scent of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon wrapping around him. A few regulars sat at the counter chatting about the incoming storm. Martha, the diner's owner, glanced up from behind the counter, wiping her hands on a towel. "Coffee?" she asked. "Sure," Noah said, sliding onto a stool. "And can I ask you something?" Martha poured his coffee, then leaned on the counter. "You're going to ask about the dog, aren't you?" Noah raised an eyebrow. So it's not just me." Martha chuckled. "Honey, that dog has been sitting out there for 4 years. You're a little late to the mystery." 4 years. Noah frowned, stirring his coffee. 4 years. Waiting for what? Martha sighed. "That's the thing. No one really knows." She glanced out the window at the faithful figure still sitting near the gas station, his gaze locked on the road ahead. "Some folks say he belonged to a trucker who used to stop here. Others think he got lost and never found his way home. But me?" She shook her head. "I think he's waiting for his family." Noah followed her gaze, watching Duke's unmoving silhouette against the backdrop of the open highway. He had covered plenty of human interest stories before. Missing persons, survival tales, even heartwarming reunions between lost pets and their owners. But this was different. This dog had waited for 4 years in the same spot. Why? Noah pulled out his phone and opened his investigative notes. There was a story here, a truth buried beneath the mystery, and he was going to find it. 4 years earlier, Duke had a home. He wasn't a stray. He wasn't lost. He was loved. His days were filled with laughter, warmth, and the boundless energy of a boy who adored him. Lucas Carter, just 10 years old at the time, had practically grown up with Duke. From the moment his parents brought the tiny German shepherd puppy home, they had been inseparable. Lucas would wake up early, just to be the first to greet Duke. The dog slept at the foot of his bed, followed him to the kitchen every morning, and waited eagerly at the door every afternoon when Lucas returned from school. His mother, Emily Carter, 38, gentle but strong-willed, with warm brown eyes and shoulder-length chestnut hair, would often smile and say, "I don't know who's more excited, Lucas to see Duke, or Duke to see Lucas." His father, Benjamin Carter, 41, tall, sturdy, with sharp blue eyes that always carried the weight of responsibility, was a man of few words. But every night, when he came home from work, he knelt beside Duke, rubbed his ears, and murmured, "Good boy, looking out for the family." And Duke always was. Until the night everything changed. The storm came fast. Heavy rain, howling wind, a treacherous slick road. The Carter family was driving home from a weekend trip to visit Emily's parents. Duke sat in the back seat, his head resting on Lucas's lap, lulled by the rhythmic patter of raindrops against the car windows. Then, headlights. Too close. Too fast. A flash of a white. Emily barely had time to scream before the impact sent their car skidding off the highway. The world flipped, twisted, shattered. Glass broke. Metal screamed. Lucas cried out for his parents. Then, silence. When Duke awoke, everything was dark. His ears rang. His body ached. The acrid scent of smoke filled the air. Somewhere in the distance, voices shouted. Sirens wailed. Someone was crying. Duke stumbled forward, disoriented. The car was on its side. The front end was crushed. And Lucas was gone. Number not gone. Being carried away. Duke saw them. Firefighters, paramedics, strangers, rushing to pull Benjamin, Emily, and Lucas from the wreck. He barked. He tried to reach them. But someone grabbed him, trying to hold him back. Panic took over. Duke twisted, yanked, broke free, and ran. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to find them. Through the storm, through the chaos, he ran, until the world became unfamiliar, until he found himself on a lonely stretch of highway. And that's where he stayed. For days Duke searched. He wandered up and down the road, looking for the car, for Lucas, for anything that made sense. But they never came. Hunger and exhaustion eventually forced him toward the small town nearby. That's when he found the gas station. It was close to the accident site. It had shelter. And most importantly, it was the last place he had seen them. And so, Duke waited. Days turned to weeks. Weeks turned to months. Months turned to years. And for 4 long years, through scorching summers, freezing winters, and relentless storms, he never left. Because Duke knew one thing. Lucas was out there. And one day, he would come back. Somehow, Duke believed. If he just stayed there long enough, if he waited one more day, one more hour, one more moment, his family would come back for him. So, he waited 4 years, present day. Noah Patterson sat in his car scrolling through old missing dog reports on his laptop. Hours of searching, cross-checking records, and scanning local shelters had led him nowhere. Until now. His pulse quickened as his eyes locked onto a report from 4 years ago, filed by Benjamin and Emily Carter. Missing, German Shepherd, Duke. Last seen after a car accident on Highway 214. Noah's breath caught in his throat. Highway 214. The accident site was less than a mile from where Duke had been waiting. For 4 years. This wasn't just a stray dog. This was a dog who had never stopped waiting for his family. And they had no idea he was still alive. Noah gripped the steering wheel, his mind racing. What now? He turned to look at Duke, still sitting by the gas station, eyes locked on the road, still waiting. Noah knew he couldn't just drive away. Grabbing his camera from the passenger seat, he stepped out of his car. If this story didn't deserve to be told, nothing did. The video that changed everything. Noah parked at a distance, careful not to startle Duke, then set up his camera. The evening light was perfect, soft golden hues casting a glow over the lonely figure, highlighting the quiet heartbreak in his eyes. He pressed record. This is Duke, and for 4 years he has been waiting. The words came naturally. No one knows exactly how he survived, but every day he sits in the same place, staring at the same road, waiting for someone who never came back. Noah zoomed in on Duke's worn-out fur, the subtle twitch of his ears at passing cars, the hope in his tired eyes. People have tried to help him, but he refuses to leave. He's waiting, for a reason. He took a slow breath before delivering the final blow. Today, I found out the truth. 4 years ago, Duke was in a car accident. His family thought they lost him forever. But what they never knew is that he never stopped waiting for them. Noah let the camera linger on Duke before stopping the recording. He had covered hundreds of stories before, but this was different. This was going to touch hearts. A plea for help. Noah uploaded the video to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook with a simple caption. The dog who never left. This German Shepherd has been sitting in the same spot for 4 years. After a tragic accident, his family thought he was gone forever. But he never gave up. Now, we need to find them. Can you help? And then, he waited, but he didn't have to wait long. The world responds. Within an hour, the video had over 10,000 views. Comments flooded in. This is breaking my heart. Someone find his family. Dogs are too pure for this world. Please tell me he's getting help. Then something unbelievable happened. A woman commented, I think I know this dog. Across the country. In a quiet suburban home, Lucas Carter, now 14 years old, sat scrolling through his phone. A notification popped up. A video. Someone had sent it to him. He clicked play. The moment the dog's face appeared on screen, his heart stopped. Number it couldn't be. He sat up, gripping the phone tightly. barely able to breathe, as he listened to the voice in the video. 40 years ago, Duke was in a car accident. His family thought they lost him forever, but what they never knew is that he never stopped waiting for them. Tears welled in Lucas's eyes. His voice came out as a whisper. Duke! His mother, Emily Carter, walked into the room just as Lucas turned to her, his hands shaking. Mom! His voice trembled. I think they found him. Emily frowned, taking the phone from his hands. She hit play. As she watched the footage, her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God! A message that changed everything. Within 3 hours, Noah's inbox was flooded. Thousands of messages, reporters, rescue organizations, people offering to adopt Duke. But one message stood out. From Emily Carter. Noah opened it. His pulse raced. That's our dog. That's Duke. We thought he was gone forever. Please, please tell me he's still there. Noah stared at the screen, his heart pounding. This was it. The miracle Duke had been waiting for. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He reread Emily Carter's message again. That's our dog. That's Duke. We thought he was gone forever. Noah took a breath, and he started typing. He's still there. Noah exhaled sharply, his chest tightening. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was real. A family had spent 4 long years believing they had lost their beloved dog. And all this time, Duke had been waiting for them. Noah's fingers trembled as he typed. Emily, I just saw your message. Duke is still here. He never left. He's been waiting in the same spot for 4 years. No matter what anyone does, he won't leave. He hit send and barely had time to set his phone down before a reply popped up. Where are you? We need to come. Noah's heart pounded. He quickly sent the location and his number. Within seconds, his phone rang. Hello? The voice on the other end was shaking. Is this real? It was Emily. Noah cleared his throat. Yes, ma'am. I'm looking at him right now. He's right here. Silence. Then, a choked sob. We're coming. Oh my God, we're coming. Noah swallowed hard. How far are you? We live in Denver now. It's a long drive, but we're leaving right now. Denver, over 10 hours away. I'll be here, Noah assured her. Duke isn't going anywhere. Emily's voice cracked. Please tell him we're coming. Noah's throat tightened. He looked at Duke, still sitting in his usual spot by the gas station, eyes locked on the road, waiting, as he always had. I think he already knows. The next few hours passed in a blur. Noah couldn't leave Duke alone. Not now. He stayed close, watching over him, making sure nothing disturbed him. Word spread quickly. Locals began gathering, whispering among themselves about the reunion that was about to take place. Martha from the diner brought Duke fresh food and a warm blanket, her hands trembling. I knew he was waiting for someone. I just didn't know who. Truck drivers who had seen Duke over the years stopped by, sharing their own stories, how they had tried to help, not understanding why he wouldn't leave. Now they did. Duke's loyalty had never wavered. As night fell, the town grew quiet. Noah sat near Duke, pulling his jacket tighter against the cold. He glanced at the time. 4 hours left. Duke shifted beside him. And for the first time, Noah saw something different in his expression. A flicker of anticipation, like he could feel that something was about to change. Noah whispered, "Just a little longer, buddy." "They're coming." Duke's ears twitched, but he never took his eyes off the road. Just before dawn, headlights appeared in the distance. Noah stood up, his heart pounding. The car slowed, then pulled into the gravel lot of the gas station. The moment the engine stopped, the passenger door flew open. Emily Carter stepped out first, trembling, clutching her coat around her, her eyes desperately scanning the area. Benjamin followed, his face unreadable, hands clenched at his sides, and then from the back seat a boy stepped out. Lucas, now 14th taller, more grown, but still with the same hopeful eyes. No one spoke. Duke had stood up, his ears perked, his body rigid, his eyes locked onto the three figures standing near the car. The world seemed to hold its breath. Emily took a hesitant step forward. Duke! The dog didn't move. Then, Lucas's voice, soft but unsteady. It's me, buddy. Duke's ears flicked. His nose twitched. Then, a single step forward. Noah held his breath. Duke's tail gave the slightest movement. Emily let out a sob. Lucas crouched down, arms open, his voice cracking. Come here, boy. Duke took another step, then another, and suddenly, he was running. Emily cried out as Duke reached them, barreling into Lucas, nearly knocking him over. The boy buried his face in the dog's fur, sobbing. You waited for us. Benjamin knelt, his strong stoic facade crumbling as he stroked Duke's back. His voice broke. Good boy, good boy. Emily wrapped her arms around them both, tears streaming down her face. Duke let out a sound, not a bark, not a whimper. Something deeper. A sound of pure relief. Noah swallowed hard, his vision blurring. The dog, who had never given up, who had waited for 4 long years, was finally going home. After 4 long years of waiting, Duke had finally come home. The drive back was quiet. In the back seat, Duke lay curled up beside Lucas, who never stopped stroking his fur. Every few minutes, the boy would whisper, I missed you, buddy. Duke didn't respond with playful licks or a wagging tail. He didn't lean into Lucas the way he used to, but he didn't pull away either. That was enough, for now. Emily glanced in the rear-view mirror, watching them. Her hands gripped the steering wheel a little too tight. She had dreamed of this moment for years, bringing Duke home. But as much as she wanted to believe everything would go back to normal, she knew it wouldn't be that simple. Duke wasn't the same dog they had lost. And after 4 years of waiting in the cold, alone, trusting humans again, wouldn't come easily. When they finally pulled into the driveway, Lucas nudged Duke gently. We're home, boy. The dog lifted his head slowly, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar house. It wasn't the same one he remembered. After their accident, the Carters had moved from their old home in Wyoming to Denver, Colorado. The house was bigger, with a spacious backyard. But to Duke, it wasn't home. Lucas unbuckled his seatbelt and opened the door, stepping out first. He waited for Duke to follow, but for the first time since they had found him, Duke hesitated. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She exchanged a glance with Benjamin, who nodded before stepping forward. Crouching at the open door, he called softly, Duke. The dog's ears flicked, but he didn't move. Lucas knelt beside his father. You're safe now. I promise. Seconds passed. Then, slowly, cautiously, Duke stepped out. His paws touched the pavement like he was walking on unfamiliar ground. His body remained tense, his ears flicking at every little sound. A rustling tree branch made him flinch. A passing car made his tail lower. He was waiting for something to go wrong. Inside, Lucas led Duke to his old dog bed in the corner of the living room. It's yours, buddy. He patted the soft cushion. Duke sniffed it, but he didn't lay down. Instead, he paced. His tail was low, his body stiff. The warmth of the house, the smells, the voices, it was all too much. Emily knelt beside him, reaching out a hand. "You're home now," she whispered. Duke flinched. Lucas saw it happen. The way Duke's muscles tensed, the way his eyes darted toward the door, as if already planning an escape. Lucas's chest tightened. 4 years. 4 years outside, in the cold, the rain, surviving on his own. Did he even remember what home felt like? The first few nights were the hardest. Duke refused to sleep inside. Lucas tried everything. He laid out blankets. He left food near his bed. He even slept on the floor beside him. But no matter what he did, Duke wouldn't settle down. Instead, he curled up near the back door, staring at it, as if he was still waiting. Waiting for a family that had left him behind. Waiting for a past that no longer existed. Lucas lay awake, watching him. He wanted to reach out, to comfort him. But how do you heal a heart that has been waiting in silence for 4 years? So he gave Duke what Duke had given them. Time. The breakthrough came on a cold morning, 1 week later. Lucas woke up early, rubbing the sleep from his eyes as he made his way downstairs. He stopped, and his breath caught in his throat. Duke! He wasn't by the door. He was curled up on his dog bed. For the first time since coming home, Duke had chosen to stay. The German shepherd rested, his body finally relaxed. His breathing was slow, steady. Lucas's heart swelled. It wasn't much, but it was something. He grabbed his phone and quickly sent a text to his mom upstairs. "Mom, he's sleeping on his bed." Seconds later, her reply came. "Don't wake him. Let him feel safe." Lucas set his phone down and sat on the floor a few feet away, watching Duke as he slept in his home, for the first time in 4 years. That night, Lucas lay on the couch, flipping through an old photo album. The pictures of Duke as a puppy made him smile. Then movement. Lucas turned his head and his heart nearly stopped. Duke was standing next to him, staring. Lucas didn't dare move. Slowly, cautiously, Duke took another step forward. Then with quiet determination, he placed his head on Lucas's lap. Lucas's throat tightened as he stroked the dog's fur. "You remember me, don't you?" he whispered. Duke let out a soft breath. And for the first time since coming home, he wagged his tail. Duke had come a long way in the weeks since his return. He was eating regularly, sleeping inside, even following Lucas around the house. He no longer flinched when Emily reached out to pet him. His tail wagged more, but there were still moments of hesitation. The door. Every time someone opened the back door, Duke's ears perked, his muscles tensed, and for a split second it looked like he was thinking about running. Lucas noticed it every time. His parents said it would take time, that Duke had spent so long waiting to be reunited that he wasn't sure how to stop. Lucas wasn't worried about time. He was worried about what would happen if Duke ever got the chance to leave. He would find out soon enough. The afternoon was crisp, the sky painted in soft shades of gold and blue. Lucas had just gotten home from school, dropping his backpack near the door. Duke greeted him with a small wag of his tail as Lucas knelt down to scratch behind his ears. "You want to go outside, buddy?" Duke tilted his head. Lucas smiled. "Come on, let's try it." He had been waiting for this moment for weeks. Up until now, Duke had only been allowed outside on a leash, to make sure he wouldn't panic and run. But today, Lucas wanted to see if Duke could finally trust that this was his home. He walked to the back door and slowly opened it. Duke stepped forward, hesitant at first, sniffing the air. Lucas stepped onto the porch, watching carefully. "Go on." Duke's ears twitched, his paws touched the grass. He took a few cautious steps forward, looking around the backyard, and then, A loud crash echoed through the neighborhood. Fireworks. Duke froze. His entire body went stiff, ears pinned back, tail lowered. Lucas's stomach dropped. Another explosion of sound. Before Lucas could react, Duke turned and ran. "Duke!" Lucas sprinted after him. The dog was already halfway across the yard, heading straight for the open gate. Lucas's heart pounded. He should have closed it. His legs burned as he pushed himself faster. But Duke was quicker. For the first time in weeks, instinct took over. The sound of fireworks, the open space, the panic. His body remembered survival. He slipped through the gate and onto the sidewalk. "Duke, wait!" Lucas's voice cracked as he shouted. The dog skidded to a stop. For a long, breathless second, he stood at the edge of the street. Lucas saw it, the conflict in his eyes. 4 years of waiting, 4 years of searching, 4 years of believing that if he left, maybe, just maybe, he would find what he had been looking for. Lucas's voice was desperate. "Don't go." Duke looked back at him, and then he made his choice. Duke turned around. Lucas exhaled sharply, his hands shaking as he crouched down. "It's okay, buddy. I'm right here." Duke took one step toward him, then another, and then, with a soft whimper, he pressed his head into Lucas's chest. Lucas wrapped his arms around him, his voice thick with emotion. "You're home." Duke's tail gave a small wag. For the first time, he truly believed it. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the Carters' backyard. The days had started to grow shorter, but Duke's journey toward healing had only just begun. He wasn't the same dog who had walked into their home weeks ago. Duke had changed, not just in the way he behaved, but in the way he saw the world. Less fearful, less guarded. Lucas stood at the edge of the yard, watching Duke run. The dog's form was a blur of black and tan, his tail held high as he sprinted across the grass. No hesitation, no doubt. Duke was finally letting himself be free. For the past month, he had spent more time outside, running without restraint. Emily had been nervous at first, afraid that if they let him go without a leash, he might disappear again, but Lucas knew better. Duke didn't need to be confined. He needed to trust, needed to know that he wasn't trapped anymore. It had been a slow process. Each day, Duke grew more comfortable. The fireworks incident had been a setback, but also a turning point, because for the first time, Duke had made a choice to stay. "Hey, Duke!" Lucas called, waving his arms. Duke came to an immediate stop, turning toward Lucas with a spark of pure joy in his eyes. Then he ran, bounding toward him, closing the distance in seconds. When Duke reached him, he skidded to a stop and jumped up, placing his front paws on Lucas's chest. Lucas laughed, steadying himself as Duke licked his face, his tail wagging furiously. "You're a good boy, aren't you?" Lucas said through his laughter, his voice thick with emotion. Duke barked, a deep, joyful sound, before hopping down and running in circles around him. It was his new game, chasing Lucas, pausing, then looking back as if to say, "Catch me if you can." Lucas grinned. This wasn't the same dog who had been lost and alone in the world for so long. This was Duke, the dog who had come home. Inside the house, Emily and Benjamin watched from the window, their faces soft with relief. The past month had been about rebuilding, not just Duke's trust, but their family's trust too, in the world, in each other. Emily glanced at Benjamin, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think he remembers us?" Benjamin nodded, his eyes never leaving Duke. "I think he does." Outside, Lucas was still laughing, still running, his voice filled with the pure joy of the moment. Duke's paws pounded against the earth, his body moving effortlessly, his ears flicking back at the sound of Lucas's voice. Every time Lucas called his name, Duke looked back, "Good boy." Emily whispered the words, a tear slipping down her cheek. Benjamin reached over, squeezing her hand. "He's home." It wasn't just the Carters who noticed the change in Duke. Earlier that week, Martha from the diner had stopped by, a bag of Duke's favorite treats in her hands. She smiled as she handed them to Lucas. "He looks good. He's finally starting to settle in." Lucas took the treats, glancing over at Duke, who was stretched out on the grass, belly up in the sunlight. "Yeah," he said softly. "It's like he knows he's safe now." At that moment, the door creaked open behind them. Duke lifted his head, and then he wagged his tail, because this time he knew he wasn't waiting anymore. He was home. Emily stepped out onto the porch. "Dinner's ready," she called. Duke paused mid-chase, his ears flicking at the sound of her voice. Without hesitation, he turned and trotted over to Emily, his tail wagging. Lucas followed, smiling as Duke sat patiently in front of Emily, waiting for his treat. Emily crouched down, running a hand over his fur. "Good boy," she murmured. "It's time for dinner." Duke sat still, his tail sweeping the porch, his eyes full of trust. He didn't bark, he didn't whine. He just sat there, content, calm, as if he understood that this was his home now. That night, after dinner, the family gathered in the living room. Duke lay stretched out on the floor by their feet, the warmth of the house surrounding them. It felt different. It felt whole. For the first time in 4 years, Duke had found his way back, not just physically, but emotionally. And as Lucas rested his head against the couch, Duke moved closer, gently placing his head on Lucas's lap, just like the old days. Lucas smiled, running his fingers through the dog's fur. "Good night, buddy." Duke let out a soft sigh, his eyes fluttering shut. No longer lost, no longer a ghost of the past. He was home. For 4 long years, Duke had waited, through storms, through loneliness, through the unknown. He never gave up. He believed his family would return. And in the end, his faith was not in vain. This story is more than just a reunion. It's about loyalty. It's about love. It's about second chances. It's about the unbreakable bond between a dog and the people who love him. Not every lost dog gets a miracle like Duke, but his story proves that hope is never wasted. If this story touched your heart, help spread the message. Adopt, don't shop. Never give up on an animal who trusts you. Share this story, because sometimes a dog waiting by the road isn't just lost. Maybe, just maybe, they're waiting for someone who still loves them.